Alright, in this section we're going to take a look at Ember JS and just go over really quick what it is, what it does. Ember JS is an open source JavaScript framework for building ambitious web applications. And that's the actual definition that's on the Ember homepage. Alright, and Ember is used to build both large scale and smaller applications. When it was created, it was actually intended for very large scale web applications. But after it was released, it was realized that it also worked very well with smaller apps. And now it's actually recommended that when you're learning Ember, that you start with very, very small applications. All right, and Ember is an out-of-the-box solution. All right, it's not, you don't need any kind of other library or framework to go with it. It's a full MVC framework, and it basically does everything you need to build a quality web application. So what are the requirements for Ember? Okay, so you need to have Node.js installed. Node.js, if you haven't used it, it's an open source cross-platform runtime environment for developing web or JavaScript applications. And it is available, obviously it's cross-platform, so it's available for Windows, Linux, Mac. NPM is the Node package manager, and that comes with Node, so it's not a separate installation. And that's used to install Ember. It's also used to install other packages and add-ons. Git, which is the version control system, which manages Ember's dependencies. All right, so it's really easy to install as well. And we will be going over how to install and set these things up in this chapter. So who uses Ember? Well, there's a long list of services and applications that use Ember. These are just some of them. Discourse is a really popular social and communication platform. Square, I'm sure you've heard of. It is a software and hardware company that processes credit cards. They have the little thing that you plug into your smartphone and you can take credit cards. All right, which is really popular right now. Hummingbird is a social network geared towards anime fans. Yahoo Advertising actually uses Ember. And then Ghost is a fairly new blogging platform that uses Ember JS. So some of the advantages of Ember, just like you would want with any kind of framework, you want to save time, and it does just that. And it does that through a lot of different reasons, but mostly due to reusable add-ons and components, and it lets you write very minimal code. And one reason for that is convention over configuration, which I'll go over in a second. Code organization, everything is very organized. You can create your own components, so you can compartmentalize all your different functionality. It's used for large and small scale apps. It's highly opinionated and uses the convention over configuration philosophy, much like Ruby on Rails. What that means basically is that you can write a very small amount of code that does a lot of stuff, a lot of different functionality, as long as you follow a certain set of guidelines or conventions. All right, so as long as you set up your classes a certain way or use certain objects and variables and whatever it may be, it's just something that is also really helpful if you have a large team and you have a lot of people working on the same thing, because they all have to kind of follow the same rules, so everything stays pretty organized. All right, and then finally, it's a fun framework to work with. I enjoy it. Most people that I have talked to that use Ember also enjoy it. All right, so those are just some of the advantages. Now, some of the core concepts that Ember uses are templates, which control the user interface, what the user sees, and by default uses the handlebars template engine, which is really easy to use and also really powerful. Components, so we can organize our user interface and our functionality into smaller components, which give us reusable code, whether it's for that certain project or for another. Controllers are similar to components, except components cannot be routed to, and controllers can. And actually, in the Ember documentation, it says that eventually components are going to replace controllers altogether. All right, models represent the persistent state of the application and the data. Okay, so anything dealing with the actual data, that belongs in the model. And then we have routes, which load the controllers and load the templates and kind of give us a map of our application through certain URLs. So Ember uses the MVC design pattern, which is model view controller. As I said in the last slide, the model deals with the data. The view is the part of the application that the user sees. All right, and in Ember we have templates which display the view. And then the controller will direct the application and fetch things, and kind of like the traffic controller. And then over here we have a simple graphic of MVC as well as the other components, which are the router and the template. Okay, we kind of have a special version of MVC with Ember because we're also dealing a lot with routes and templates. All right. And the route basically loads the model, renders the view, sets the model on the controller, and the view will render the template. All right, so it's kind of a simple cycle that Ember uses. Ember CLI is the command line utility for building and testing Ember apps, and we'll be using this quite a bit. It's really easy to get going. We just use npm to install it, and we can just create Ember applications. We can generate things like models and controllers. The Ember kit, or the Ember app kit, has been deprecated and replaced with Ember CLI. So if you've used Ember in the past, you may have used the app kit, which was kind of like just a starter boilerplate, but that has been replaced with Ember CLI, so that's what we'll be using in this course. All right, and this is, like I said, installed with npm. You can see we have a very simple install command here, and we'll be doing that in this chapter. So the object model is another concept that Ember uses. Standard JavaScript class patterns are not widely used in Ember. The Ember.object provides a class system that supports features like mix-ins and constructor methods. And this here is a very simple example of an Ember object. Okay, we're creating an object called person, and it has a method called say. All right, so very simple structure. Testing, okay, so we can run a few different types of tests using Ember. There's acceptance tests, which test user interaction and the flow of an application. Unit tests will test isolated chunks of functionality. And then we have integration tests, which are kind of a middle ground between acceptance tests and unit tests. Okay, so that is a quick overview, very quick overview of Ember. We'll obviously get a lot more into it as the course goes on. So that's it, and I will see you in the next section.